We will pray with our feet, hand in hand, oh, we will take to the streets. We are love, we are hope, and we won't back down. Oh.
Okay, let's do it.
Okay. Next slide, please. Thank you very much. Hi, everyone. I am Karen Sim, a past president of Isaac M. Wise Temple Sisterhood in Cincinnati, Ohio, and I belong to the WRJ Central District. Soon we'll all be together, but right now I'm still the Central District. I have served on the WRJ North American Board for many years, and I've held many positions, and currently I am the first vice president of Women of Reform Judaism. I also am a trustee on the Union of Reform Judaism Board, and I also serve on the HUC-JIR Board of Advisors for the Central Region. Janet.
Hello, I'm Janet Buckstein. I am a past WRJ North America board member and a past president of the Midwest District. I'm a member and co-lead the women's group at Macomb Salal Lakeside in Highland Park, Illinois. And I also serve, and I'm a past congregation president, and I serve on the board of directors for Union of Reform Judaism. So with that, one of the key people that I'm going to introduce to you is Cindy Levy. She is handling all of our technology, which is significant. Cindy is a technical guru. But one of the things we'll be talking about is Q&A, and I just wanted you to be aware that as we're going through, if you have a question that requires clarification, like you don't understand something, then just either put it in chat, which we'll be monitoring, or there's also under reactions, you can raise your hand. But for the most part, more in-depth questions will be at the end of each part. We have two sessions today. So with that, take it away, Cindy.
So I just want to make sure, does everybody know on their system that they're using where the chat is located? And do they know how to use it? If you do not, then just raise your hand. Otherwise, I'm not going to go through it at this point. The other thing that we would like to make use of is the reactions, raising your hand. What that will do is put us in order in terms of when questions are asked. And before I go to the next slide, if I see anybody with a reaction, I can do that. Otherwise, if you put your question in the chat, I will be monitoring the chat. The one other thing that we will be doing is a word cloud, which is a really cool thing if you have not been a participant on that. So if you do have a smartphone or another iPad or something, it would be useful to have that because it makes it easier, but otherwise you can use another browser, and I'm going to later on give you a website to put in. So with that, we are going to go on to the next slide.
We are hoping that each of you can come away from this workshop with ideas for alternative leadership models that you may consider to use in your women's group or sisterhood. How can you make changes in your organization that works within your group's particular culture and works with the structure of your congregation? And how can you create an action plan that will help you monitor, revise, and actualize the goals and changes you and your group decide or you wish to pursue? Next slide, please. So what do I want to come away with? We'd like to get to know each other a little bit right now and share who we are, the name of our women's group, and briefly, one goal that you are looking to come away with by the end of this webinar. And as Cindy had just mentioned, I will call on you in the order that you raise your hand with your reaction button on the screen. And so please remember to unmute yourself when it's time for you to speak, and please remember to remute yourself after you've spoken. Thanks. So right now, just Cindy's going to share the screen, and I'm going to call on you. Just going to put us on gallery.
I have put in the chat what the 3 questions are. So if you
yes, thank you.
If you need
your name, your women's group, and one goal. Yes, so the first person I see with the raised hand is Marilyn Glazer. Marilyn Glazer, yes, sorry about that.
Hi, so my name is Marilyn Glazer, and I'm with BJBE in Deerfield. And my goal for today is to find out if there are alternate ways of leadership instead of just a president or co-presidents. And I don't know if you're going to be covering that, but that's my goal.
Yes, thank you, Marilyn. Okay, Andy Blaine.
Hi, my name is Andy Blaine, and I'm a past president of Sisterhood Temple Beth Israel. And we are interested in possibly researching alternative structures besides presidents, VPs, et cetera, et cetera. So I hope to come away with some ideas of other sisterhoods, women's groups who have achieved this goal, and where we can go to further research for this information.
Thank you. Erica.
Hi, my name is Erica Goldstein, and I'm president of the Sisterhood at Temple Isaiah in Lafayette, California. I actually moved from Glencoe, Illinois 3 years ago. We were members of Am Shalom, so I'm recognizing a lot of names here. What I'm interested in walking away with, like the others who have spoken, is what type of alternative models are out there so that you have a strong succession plan. And to see what ideas there are and ways that we can move to a better model so that we can ensure that there are others in the limelight who want to lead.
I like that, succession planning. Thank you. Cynthia.
Thea Miller, and I am one of the co-presidents of Temple Beth Israel in Skokie, Illinois. And this is the beginning of this idea of making changes in our structure. So I'm just here to find out what the ideas are and then think about how they would apply to my sisterhood.
Thank you. Sandy.
My name is Sandy Flaxman, and I am the coordinator of the Women of Temple Shalom in Louisville Central District. And what I would like to walk away is my next steps, because we have changed to an alternate leadership that is very fledgling, and obviously COVID has kind of made it a little slower than it could be. So that's where I am.
Thanks, Sandy. Carol Bloom.
Hi, my name's Carol Bloom, and I'm actually from Central District, Temple Israel Sisterhood in West Lafayette, Indiana. What my goal is we have not had a full board for about 8 years, and it's fallen pretty much on one person. I'm the past coordinator. We have a nice, wonderful young person who is now the current coordinator, but we really need to find something that involves more people so that there is a succession line for future leadership.
Lynn, thank you very much, Carol.
This Lynn, me?
Yes, sorry.
Okay. I'm Lynn Katz-Danzig. I'm at Temple Shalom in Naples, Florida. As I said earlier, I'm new. I'm the communications person. They said, "Can you do computer stuff?" I said, "Yes." So I am. That's how I think I got that job. What do I want? Always looking for ways to motivate people to do things and to join.
Great, thank you so much. I'm not, okay, so I see, no, excuse me. I'm having trouble reading your first name, Sue. Thank you. Please unmute. Sue, unmute, please. There you go.
Sue Normoyle, Temple Emmanuel, Davenport, Iowa. Definitely, we're looking at a different way, and I like the idea of people talking about succession and getting people to respond of any age.
Thank you very much, Sue. So I know that there are people here who have not raised their hands, so I can kind of go down the list a little bit that I can see, and if I leave anybody out, please just let me know. So I have a Marilyn Rodman there. Unmute, please, Marilyn.
My name is Marilyn Rodman. I am co-president of Sinai Temple Sisterhood in Michigan City, Indiana. And whether it's president of the temple or leaders for sisterhood, people are willing to help, but they don't want to step up and be a leader. So it's finding ways to develop leadership, I guess, would be the best way to put it.
Thank you, Joni. I mean, Marilyn, because I'm looking at Joni who's next. So I apologize, Marilyn.
Okay.
Joni Shore.
Hi, I'm Joni Share. I'm from Temple Isaiah, also in Lafayette, California. And with Erica, we're looking at different ways to restructure our leadership model and look at a succession plan. And in the process, I'm really curious about what titles are using. Are titles important to people? We've come up with fun ones and silly ones, but really are titles important as you go forward in terms of leadership?
Interesting.
Thanks so much, Joni. And then I think, and be sure that you ask those questions going forward, okay, in this webinar. Thank you. And Terry, it's Terry Satchel. Could you please, thank you, go ahead.
I'm Terry Saxel from BJBE Sisterhood in Deerfield, Illinois. And I think Marilyn pretty well stated what we are looking for is someone to maybe change things and a different kind of structure. We being on the nominating committee has been painful because finding people to step up is very difficult.
So, and then we have Dorothy Anderson, please.
Yeah, hello. I'm Dorothy Anderson from TBI in Skokie, Illinois, and I am completely new on doing anything in leadership. So any information I can gather from this will be very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Dorothy, and good luck to you.
Thank you.
And then we have Lisa Wynn.
Hi, I'm from Temple Beth Israel as well in Skokie, Illinois, and I am a co-president currently. I'm enjoying being a leader, but struggle with organization skills, and looking for ways of being better at delegating and having a better sense of WRJ.
Thanks so much, Lisa. And then we have CJ O'Neill.
My name is CJ or Carol, but there's usually too many Carols. I am a member of Congregation Emmanuel of Waukesha, Wisconsin, and I am the long-running secretary, and we are just looking for ways to get a boost and get new people involved.
So is there anybody now wait a second, is there a Marjorie, I don't think we heard from you. Yes, your hand is up there. Thank you. Could you please?
Hello. Thank you. Margie Abrahamson. I'm in St. Paul, Minnesota. I am a member of the Mount Zion Temple. I was a former president of the Women in Mount Zion Temple. Last year, we went with the decision to go with a non-president format. Right now, it's very flying by the seat of our pants. And I am personally looking for a way to really make this a concrete platform. But I also have to say that every single thing that every other woman in this room has said applies to everything I'm thinking. So thank you.
Thank you, Marjorie. So I think, is there anybody I didn't acknowledge or didn't recognize? Did I get everybody? Okay, so I want to thank you all for sharing and for introducing yourselves. And if I were to summarize what I heard questions about actually alternative leadership structures, about leadership succession, and about how you, and nomenclature. Those are the three big buckets that I put this in. And so, let's make sure we're going to do our best to give you tools, or to give you some answer and to give you some tools. How's that? So without further ado, we can go on to the next slide, please. So why are we considering new leadership designs? So I'd like to put our concern, which you've all just expressed, with our current situations and our search for new leadership models for our sisterhoods into historical context. I feel it's very important to view ourselves not just as a moment in time, but as part of a continuum. Throughout American life, women have fashioned a unique place for themselves within their religious communities. The first mention of an American Jewish Women's Association is in 1819 in Philadelphia as the Female Hebrew Benevolent Society of Congregation Mikveh Israel, to help the poor women in their congregation. Fast forward to the 1870s, at Kahal Kadosh Beth Elohim in Charleston, South Carolina, a married women's committee served the needs of the Jewish poor. Single women also wanted to be involved, and so the Happy Workers Club was created in 1889. And this included unmarried women, which was a big deal. 19th century women's groups focused on caring for the poor and the sick. By the last 2 decades of the 19th century, synagogues in every sizable American community had a women's auxiliary of some kind, called the Temple Sewing Societies, the Temple's Women's Social Club, and the Temple's Willing Workers, just to name a few. By the beginning of the 20th century, many Jewish women in Reform congregations were attracted to the emancipation movement and became active in political debate as well as social concerns. A growing recognition arose that a women's auxiliary could be an effective tool for carving out a community and congregational leadership roles for women. Carrie O. Simon enters the picture. She is on the left, and she organized 52 congregational women's groups to become the National Federation of Temple Sisterhoods, NFTS. This is where we begin to recognize our forebearers. The picture on the right is a picture taken at HUC Cincinnati at the founding of NFTS. Must have been a cold day. The word sisterhood gained prominence at the beginning of the 20th century to express solidarity with women's emancipation and suffrage movements, as well as to connote community and meaning for women, not to be defined in relationship to men. Our founders were dedicated to women's rights, social activism, and service to the congregation. Sound familiar? Over the course of the 20th century, sisterhoods became more structured, mirroring the organization of temple boards. Sisterhoods were committed to social justice, advocacy, community, and temple, while always retaining their social emphasis and their Jewish core. By affiliating in a federation of sisterhoods, we took on national and then global roles. By the middle of the 20th century, as part of NFTS, sisterhoods were represented at the United Nations, in Washington, D.C., in the American Reform Movement, in Europe, Israel, and at HUC-JIR. The National Federation of Temple Sisterhoods became Women of Reform Judaism, WRJ, in 1993. So here we are now, as part of this historical continuum, blessed with a rich history of change and success. Every group mentioned in this brief summary faced new issues, new times, and new challenges, just as we are facing today. As sisterhood women, we have become leaders in our congregations and other Jewish philanthropic organizations. We have become champions of women's rights, social justice, and universal civil rights. Yet, we still help to maintain our congregations and we enjoy one another's company. We have grown from social groups and happy workers to sisterhoods to women's groups. We have achieved the vision of our forebearers, but always, no matter what we call ourselves, no matter our structure, we are women in community, guided by Jewish values. Excuse me, let me turn off my timer. Okay, done. Okay, sorry about that. We are women who are part of an ongoing march of time and history. We are women in community, guided by Jewish values to make the world a better place. We are looking for new leadership designs because change is indeed definitional, and because the lessons of history demand that we change. We are part of a process of organizational evolution. So let's get going.
So now we'd like to find out what you think. You know, all of you gave goals for being with us today. And what do you think is causing our need to actually think about new organization designs? Just, you know, we're just looking for volunteers. What's happening with women today? That's
Terry has
causing
her
us to
hand up.
rethink this. What?
Terry has her hand up.
Okay.
Yeah, I think some of the big changes that have happened is that women now can serve on temple boards where they never did in the past. And so the only way for a woman to be active in a congregation was through the sisterhood or a comparable organization. Plus, so many young women work full-time, which they didn't years ago. And people even joining a temple is changed. You know, they don't see it as a lifelong commitment. And so those things have to be addressed.
Anyone have anything else?
Carol Bloom.
Carol?
Yes, the pace of our lives right now are so much faster than they used to be. Plus women are juggling many things, not just our like full-time work, but we also, want to be involved at Temple. We also might have some volunteer positions outside the home as well. And we have children. And so, there's many balls that we're, trying to keep up in the air and keep active. And I just think in general, the American way of life has just sped up,
right.
Not counting the COVID quarantining we just got through, but it's just so fast.
Okay.
Cynthia Miller.
I think what Carol and Terry said is just spot on. We're in an age when people have so much to do, more than ever before, so many directions that we're being led in or choosing to take, that sisterhood or even temple membership has become just one of those things. It's not as important to people as it has been, or as all time consuming as it has. We want to make sure for the continuation of our sisterhoods that we have younger women become involved, and the younger women have even more than we do to face every day with with children, with technology, with their other responsibilities. So attracting young women to sisterhood is a challenge, and something that I hope we'll cover this afternoon.
We have one more, Sandy,
Okay,
and
Sandy.
then after that, we'll go back to you.
Again, what everybody else has said is true, but also I have found over the years, there's several women who do not want to join women's groups because it's gender specific. In other words, they want, racially, not racially, well, that too, but gender integrated stuff. And there's just still a lot of people out there, regardless of how old they are, that just don't want to join because they're not joiners. Obviously we grew up with parents who were, but there are many people out there who aren't.
That's right. So let's move on, Cindy. Let's take a look at some of the things that we came up with. Now, all of you were talking about really what's impacting women's group membership overall. Okay. But now we're going to talk a bit about leadership structure. So if that's impacting your overall organization, how does that put pressure on us in terms of how we govern? So why don't, Cindy, if you want to, okay. So here's some of the things we came up with. Top-down structures are efficient, but not always engaging. And we heard from you saying, that women, they need to be engaged. They don't need to join sisterhood just to have a leadership role at the temple. Okay, next. Many women, especially younger women, want a collaborative environment. They don't necessarily want to be in a formal structure that might be like what they go to work at every day. And even at work, those things are changing where people, there's much more flexibility in terms of how people do their jobs. And finally, the biggest reason, this is the elephant in the room, in terms of why people are saying they need to change their structure, is that nobody wants to be president. And, this is impacted by all of those issues that you brought up. And it takes commitment, and it takes passion. But are there other ways to lead, to deploy that passion? So let's go to the next slide. And we're going to talk a little, when we talk about passion, let's talk about what that means in terms of sisterhood.
Thanks, Janet. I know that Janet and I, excuse me, sent out an email to all of you. And one of the things to prepare you for this webinar, and one of the things that we asked you to start thinking about were 3 words that represent to you, what do I love about sisterhood? And so we're going to make a word cloud. So this is what Cindy was talking about earlier at the very beginning. And so I'm going to turn this over to Cindy, and she's going to explain what we need to do to create our word cloud. So Cindy, go for it.
Hi, everybody. So in the chat, I put a website that you should go to, and I'm going to show you what you should see on the screen now is what do I love about sisterhood, and up above is a website, www.menti.com. And if you go to that on your phone and you put it in a browser, or you put it on a browser that is what you're going to see is that you can put in the code 55237925, and it's going to let you, it will take a minute to come up, and it will let you put in 3 words that sisterhood means to you. Now, what we have discovered is if you put in non-English words, it doesn't work so well. So my suggestion is don't put in Tikkun Olam, but an equivalent on that.
And we're going to give you a couple of minutes to do this. Don't worry, to get your words up on the screen. And if you're really having trouble, just chat with Cindy on our chat. Okay. Do we think we have it? Has anybody not had a chance to get their?
Yeah, nice.
You're still working on it, Marilyn?
Yeah, I am.
Okay.
You can, is it, Sue, you could just bring up a browser, Sue Flake, and just put in menti.com on another browser. And then
I'm trying to do it on my phone. Wait, let me see if I can get it this way. I'm having trouble. It's okay. I'll listen to it and it's okay.
So I think it's very interesting when you look at the words that are really popping out a little bit bolder than other words, that we have the word social, we have the words community, we have friendship. Those are actually very similar words in many ways. And it means that there's something really special then about your women's group, that's your glue. And that's your passion. That's the key. Right now, that's looking like the key value for many of you in this group. And of course, we have social justice, and we have family matters, and we have, can you make it, I'll have to try to make it a little bigger so I can read it. Hold on.
Yeah, I was going to say, you have to do it on your side.
Yes, I do. Collaboration, which is part of community, I would think also. And then we have belonging, and we have, I actually see people. So we have a lot of things, but we have a purpose, which is social justice. And I thought I saw Jewish values in here someplace. I could be wrong. I can't make it any bigger. So, spirituality, family history, all of these things that go into what you love about sisterhood. So these words represent our values, our needs and our hopes and our aspirations and our joys. And this passion that we have, these words are our passions. These words lead to thriving organizations and members committed to success. So if this is what we love about sisterhood, and we think this is what other women will love about sisterhood, these are the things that we have to foster, communicate, nurture, advertise, market. These are the words that will lead us to being more successful, both in terms of our organizations, the way we work together in our own group, and the people who choose to getting more people involved. So thank you very much for this. I hope you all enjoy doing this. And I'd say, Janet, next slide, please.
Okay. So now we're going to talk about organizations, but think again about what Karen just summarized for us. So if people enjoy the social and collaborative components, how much do you think they enjoy sitting at monthly 2-hour board meetings? So what we really want to do when we create structure is to make sure that we're incorporating those values into it. So here comes some learning part of this program. Right now, there are basically 3 types of women's group structures that exist, although There are some that like overlap and may incorporate others. But you have the traditional. So I want everybody just to raise your hand like this. How many people have a traditional structure where it's president, EVP, FVP, etc.? So we have, oh, so we don't have that many of you have already, looks like you've already changed based on what I'm seeing. But that is what typically most women's groups have. And I know the last time in Midwest that we actually did a bit of a survey, I think over half had that structure, but that was a couple of years ago. Another one is what is called a leadership team. Basically what you do is you have functions such as vice president and a treasurer and a secretary, but you share the job of president. It could be 2 people, it could be 3 people. You break that job down into its components and you share the responsibility. And the one that's coming up the most now that I've seen is the steering committee. Steering committee it basically is a group that governs the women's group within your temple. And as we're going to see in the next slides, why don't you take us to the next slide? That can take many different forms. So let's go to the next slide. So the traditional, that really works well if you have a large board, if you're in a large congregation. The other thing is think about the culture of your organization. If you have, if your temple is very formal and structured, then this may work the best for you. You typically have duties and job descriptions that are well defined. You have bylaws, you have policies and procedures, you have everything in place. And again, as I mentioned, fitting in the culture of your organization is important. However, it does require time and commitment at the top. You do need women who are willing to serve in that president capacity. Let's go to the next slide. So the leadership team, so many women have said, well, I'll be a leader, but I don't want to take the full responsibility. But I'll work with others. I'll be part of a team. Okay. And then that team can be put together to represent different skill sets. You could have people who are really good at doing things like governance and bylaws and policies and procedures. And then you have other people who are more creative thinkers. You bring together a team of skills and the collaboration is contagious. But there are issues. This is not just something that's easy to do. You do have to make sure that all of the jobs of that president role are being done, and you have to count on people to follow through. There's no one person at the top who says, you do this, you do this, you do this. There can also be delayed decision making. If one person makes a final decision or kind of channels things through the executive committee or the board to make that decision, that's more efficient than having a group of people who have to arrive at that. And well, is efficiency the goal? Perhaps not, but it's just something to be aware of. The other thing is, and I saw this in action, you can have confusion at the top in terms of temple leadership. If you have a temple board that has a formal structure, they might say, well, we want to know where the buck stops. Who's in charge? So you need to do a good job of communicating that. Next slide. Okay, steering committee I've seen several, and they are all a little bit different. sometimes it's very similar to the leadership team where you do have functions on it. You have a committee of women where you have vice presidents and you have a treasurer and you have a secretary. Then, or others, on the other hand, one of the ones that I saw that was perhaps most creative, they were divided up by program. So the Women's Seder was one person who was in charge of that, was on the steering committee. The fall membership event, whatever those things are, it was based on people with program responsibilities. The other thing is access to temple resources may be important here. So do you have a treasurer or not? If you don't, how are you going to handle funds, and how are you going to work? And maybe the temple can be a partner with you. Again, you have the same issues in terms of really a heavy emphasis on communication. The other issue that you'll want to think about is, do you really need to have policies and procedures and bylaws if you're a steering committee? It's the steering committee, those that I'm aware of are temple standing committees. They don't have bylaws, but they do have missions and visions and organizational guidelines. So let's go to the next slide. We're not going to actually discuss this in detail. It will be in the PowerPoint that's you all will have access to. But I wanted you to see it because actually it was 2017, WRJ did their first webinar on alternative leadership models. So that's been a while. That's 5 years ago we did that. And these are 3 real live examples of organizations that had implemented alternative leadership structures. Lakeside Congregation was my congregation, so I was involved in that. We called it we called it participative leadership. We basically had a group of women. We did have a treasurer, and we did have a communications person, and we did have a program VP and a membership VP. But we basically met either monthly or bi-monthly for dinner and worked together as a team to drive the programming for the sisterhood. The interesting thing about it is that when we did this, it was already in place for 10 years. That's how long ago my temple had done that. And again, driven by the fact that there was no one who wanted to be president. Well, then all of a sudden someone said, I would be willing to be president. And we talked about it. We said, we don't want a president, because the collaboration had worked so well. So at this point, I'm not sure about the timing. Are
Pretty good. We're in good shape. It's 2:54.
Okay. And when are we supposed to break?
3 o'clock. 3:10.
Okay. 3 o'clock. So we're going to give you a break, but before we go, especially since we have some time, I do think there may be some people. The next part, when we come back from break, is that you are going to be with each other talking about your women's groups and what you think might work in terms of alternative structures for your groups. Okay. We actually, based on people who pre-registered for this, we actually have already come up with work groups, with breakout groups for you. But there may be people here, I think I know of at least one, who did not sign up initially. What that means is we have to assign you to a group. So I think, Dorothy Anderson, did you sign up initially? Where's Dorothy?
Yes, here I am. Yes, I did sign up.
Okay, and you're at Temple Beth Israel?
That's correct.
Okay, we'll just make sure that we put you into that group with
Okay,
Temple
thank
Beth
you.
Israel. Okay, is there anyone else here on this call that may not have signed up?
Well, I signed up late.
I have you, Carol.
Okay, good.
Got you in.
So I'd just like to, Janet did a fabulous job, I think, of laying out different models. And what I would like you to think about when we do go to our groups is marrying those different models and what you think might work for your group with what you think are the passions, the needs, and the desires of your sisterhoods, of your women's groups. Because, you don't need to do everything that was done in your traditionally structured sisterhood if that's not what's speaking to you and the women of your congregation. So try to marry the passions with the structure and only do only create something that's going to have value to those passions. So, and those interests. So think about that a little bit when we break out and when we have our break until we start our next session, right,
And
Janet?
right when we come back, that's the first thing we're going to be doing.
So I'm going to ask everybody if they can stay on, but go ahead and mute yourself. And if you feel like it, turn off your video, because if you're going to be doing things, we don't really care what you do. But we would like to make sure we have all the breakout groups set up. So if you sign off, then we won't be able to put you in the breakout group properly during the break. So
yeah, that's a great suggestion, Cindy, so that we can use the break time to make sure this works for everybody.
And we ask you to come back at a quarter after, whatever hour.
The same link?
It's the same link that you used to come here.
Stay on.
Don't get off. Don't get off.
Just go ahead and put yourself on mute and turn off your video, and then come back at a quarter after, please.
Yeah, because we've got people from California, so that's even a whole different time. And it's nice to have you here.
Yes.
How did California end up in our districts?
Karen Goldberg, who's involved with the Pacific District, passed it on to Joni and I. So that's why we're here, and we're so glad she did, because we love hearing all the lovely ideas you have.
Okay. So ladies, this is what we're going to be doing. We're going to talk about, we're going to discuss what type of organization would be best for your women's group. Now, we are representing, except for one group who are together, okay? Temple Beth Israel had enough people sign up that they're going to work together as a team to talk about their sisterhood. But the rest of us represent multiple sisterhoods. So we'll have a dialogue, and I'm sure that when we answer these questions, we'll have similar feelings, similar answers to the questions. And we do want, once you are broken into groups, we want you to appoint a note taker. And that note taker also may be the person who reports back later for your group, or you might have another person, but that's something you should discuss as well. So here's what we'd like you to talk about. First of all, the first question, and these are in chat, by the way, what issues do you have that could be solved with an organizational change? What might your women's group look like if you did that? And will this satisfy your group's needs? Okay, so those are the three questions. I want you to consider, the culture of your organization and what might work. What has success looked like in your congregation? Have there been new things that have evolved that were successful, and why? Is it formal? Is it informal? Do you have large versus small governing groups? I want you to think about those issues as you discuss what your organization might look like. So do we want to make sure everybody understands this before we break? Are there any questions? Okay, so we're going to go into breakouts. If you don't get put in a group, then Cindy will put you in a group.
I'm recreating the groups now so that everybody that's online will get into a group. So give me
Okay.
I got too nervous about doing it the other way.
Okay. All right. So whenever you're ready, Cindy.
Okay.
Oh, and we'll have 15 minutes to talk.